I feel a little bit like a news reporter. Oh, hello. We're going to talk a little bit of history today, but just bear with me. It's Labor Day, Part 2, the teacher edition. And I'm going to go through some historical stuff because that's just what I do. I like researching history. But bear with me because we're going someplace with this, I hope. So, the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938. It sounds so boring. I love it, though. This Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 did three things. It established a minimum wage. It allowed for anyone who worked over 40 hours a week to receive time and a half, 40 hours a week, and that minors could not be employed in oppressive child labor situations. For example, you couldn't go work in a mine instead of going to school, so that was kind of a bit of a interesting times. A little bit of history here. In 1932, a senator by the name of Hugo Black initiated a bill where he wanted to lower the number of hours that people were working in businesses to 30 hours a work week. It turned into a huge contentious issue, as I think you can imagine. But he proposed a 30-hour work week in 1932. By the time 1938 came, Congress had finally negotiated and agreed that we have a 40-hour work week, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. So that's why we have the system we have now because of this legislation. Okay, I'm going to go through some things, and then, like I said, I'll hopefully make some sense of it. There were some amendments, and I just found these kind of historically interesting. In 1949, the minimum wage increased for wartime inflation. In 1955, Eisenhower urged the expansion of the number of employees to receive minimum wage. There were a few exemptions from this, and it's important for this. Retail workers, service workers, which were also called pink-collar workers, and agricultural workers and construction workers were all exempt. None of those businesses could receive overtime pay. And so one of the pink-collar workers is, of course, education and healthcare. Anyway, then the 60s came around, and in 1961, minimum wage was extended to schools and hospitals. 63, equal pay for women. 1966, age discrimination bill went to put into effect. 1974, domestic workers received minimum wage. 1977, they increased the minimum wage. Look, just time out. I'm still nervous. I'm not in front of kids. I usually can relax, but just bear with me. Okay, 1983, there was the Migrant Worker Protection Act. 1986 amendment. The U.S. Secretary, this is kind of an interesting one. So now we see this pendulum swinging back. Okay, in 1986, there was a statement that said the U.S. Secretary of Labor can provide special certificates for employees to pay, for employers, to pay their employees who have disabilities. They had to be impaired by age, physical, or they have a mental deficiency. And so the Secretary of Labor could give these special certificates so that employers wouldn't have to pay someone with mental deficiencies minimum wage. So that went into effect in 1986. 1989, they increased wages. There was battle in this one. It was 1989, the Bush administration, and it was called the Fair Standards Amendment. And Congress, or the bill went in to raise minimum wage to $4.55. Again, just bear with me. I got to get through this. Bush vetoed it because he said raising it to $4.55 was too excessive. So I think they lowered it to $4.25 an hour. And they also agreed, it was a little sneaker in there, they agreed that employers didn't have to pay anyone under 20 the minimum wage. Okay, then Senators Orrin Hatch, Steve Simmer, and Phil Gramm were unsuccessful in trying to pass exemptions. And these exemptions that said minimum wage exemptions for small businesses, farmers that are using migrant workers. It was not passed in Congress, but President Bush signed the bill 2 weeks later. In 1904, so this is going to be after No Child Left Behind, there was what's called a rule change. And what they did was they said, in order to qualify for time and a half, you have to have designated positions of power. So what they did, They just changed the titles of people in positions of power. So if you were classified as a supervisor, they would reclassify you as what they called like executives. And then they said executives, now that there's this special exemptions put into place, they reclassified it, like I said. So they just changed the titles so that they didn't have to pay time and a half. I think, like, for example, principals of schools were exempt, even though they put in way more than 40 hours. They were exempt from this, from getting any kind of time and a half on top of that. Okay, let's keep going. Oh, they said now it has to, you can imagine where that went. Now it requires that an exemption must be predicated upon an actual job function, not just the title. Okay, fast forward 2010, the Affordable Care Act went into effect, and then patient protection. What this bill did was it gave women the right to take breaks if they were nursing, for example, if they were in the workplace and they had to take breaks. They wanted a place other than a bathroom or to be observed while they were nursing their children or pumping their breast milk. So it was really for nursing mothers. Then in 2016, there was another rule change. If you fast forward through that, that's okay, through this whole thing. But stick to why I think it's important. In 2016, there was a rule change. In 2014, Obama and the Secretary of Labor said that employees earning less than $913 a week must be paid overtime. So now they said, look, if this is the minimum that you make, you should absolutely get overtime. And it was supposed to go into effect December 1st of 2016. And then it was supposed to be adjusted every 3 years, and then January 1st, 2020. But that's going to get cut. That was put into place, but November 23rd, 2016, a U.S. district judge named Amos Mazzini III imposed an injunction on this, stopping the rule nationwide. So in other words, employers didn't have to pay over $916 a week. They just said, look, that goes against the Constitution, so it ended. So in 2019, the Department of Labor took it into reconsideration, but instead of $913 a week, they said you can only qualify to get overtime if you made $684 a week, which is about $35,000 a year. Now, and then everything's kind of been stopped since new administration. Okay. I think I'm on a roll now. I was going to stop it, but I just kind of want to get through these. They're short, but like I said, might be a little boring. Now, so there's the information. That's the what. So what? Why should we care? Well, 3 things. Historically, I think we can see that education has been used as a political and economic pawns. Like schools are used as pawns between the politicians and big business. So this battle is essentially, as I see it, profits over people, and we see that today. That's very relevant today. And the battlegrounds happen to be the contentious of laborers. It's still an attack on pink-collar workers and service workers and migrant workers. So the so what is, I think history can be used as a compass because we can see this ebb and flow, this pendulum swinging between the beginning of the Industrial Revolution and forcing people to go to work, especially under horrible circumstances, and then having that pendulum swing the other way and saying we need to protect the people, and then we're seeing the pendulum swinging back the other way. It's just this back and forth. And so I just think that's important to kind of just realize, like, we're not just stuck in this, in just this crazy time. This is historically, we're on point. Yeah? So I think that's important to know. Okay, so now what? I just wrote up a few notes. I actually wrote these up a while ago, but just wanted to go through them. If you can see this battle between essentially profits over people, which I absolutely see is happening in education, and I can go into more of that. Be a self-advocate. Today is the first day back for a lot of schools after Labor Day, and I think teachers are going into extreme and dire circumstances in a lot of cases, And so the first thing I just wanted to say, and this just not even now, but overall, be a self-advocate. No one's going to save you. If you're in education, it will always be more. If you start volunteering for stuff, that's going to open up floodgates for you to do more, and it's always going to be more and more and more. So if you don't self-advocate, you'll be taken advantage of. Especially new teachers, I feel like we really do not do justice to new teachers. They're new; they're already learning how to teach, which is hard enough, and then we put just piles and piles of stuff on them. So be a self-advocate, and that includes, and especially again for new teachers, you should have lunch without duties. Be mindful of your time. And so if somebody says, hey, we shouldn't have a meeting during lunch today, and an older teacher says, no, we really should take our lunch and not have a meeting, that's historically been a battle back and forth too, to just give teachers time to get their stuff done. But again, it's not going to be from the top down. It has to be from the teachers and from custodial staff, secretaries, etc. You're always going to be demanded more work. That's just the nature of the game. Number two, just be mindful of complaining. We have a lot to vent about. We teachers, we educators. Just be mindful of it, like how much of that complaining actually makes us even more of a victim. To say like, oh, we're going to complain, but we can't do anything about it. So just be mindful of that, I think. I think venting's important, and then we also need to just kind of switch to gratitude and things like that. Anyway, ask questions. We have so many buzzwords. Don't just play faculty buzzword bingo. Start asking, like, what's the meaning of these? Rigor, you name it. I just pulled up a bunch of them and I didn't write them down, but I think you get it. There's just a lot of buzzwords, but they just seem like they're empty. So what's behind it? We use a lot of acronyms in education, and half the time, as an older teacher, I'll say, "What does that acronym mean?" And half of us don't even know, because we just get kind of forced with these camouflaged jargon. What did I write down? Camouflaged, obscure jargon, and that's dangerous, because educational vocabulary can divert us from our honorable endeavors of actually wanting to teach. So anyway, ask questions. Number 4, take a step back. I don't feel like I'm the be-all, end-all. I know that I can be replaceable. I don't like the feeling of feeling like I'm disposable, though. Like, okay, we're not going to give you a lot of choices, but you're out, you're gone. That's how I feel anyway. And number 5, just hold strong. And just 2 words, no and yes. Start saying no to things for self-preservation, and yes for things for self-preservation. Yes, go to the bathroom when you need to go to the bathroom. No, you don't have to do these extra duties. And if students say, what about extra credit? No and yes are really powerful tools, but they have to kind of sit with you. And our kids need teachers who aren't just surviving day to day, but we want teachers that are thriving. And that's what's so heartbreaking right now, is I see my friends, my colleagues, my husband going to school today with kids with masks and face guards and face shields, and without very few options. And so I think we're at a real critical time again, where we're going into real dire circumstances. And we need to be self-advocates to get the pendulum swinging back to protecting us and students. So that's why I think it was important to research the labor laws today. And I got more to come.